Good morning. My name is Richard Wexler, and this is Caring in America, the podcast for caregivers and care recipients. You know, folks, I talk a lot on each episode about why I started doing this and kind of what my overall goal is. Let's go back. Pretty much, we talked about this average family, sandwich generation, got married later. I'm in my early 50s and I have two children, 11 and 7. I'm working in the software field. My wife has a business out of our home. We have 4 parents. We're lucky. We think they're all doing pretty well. Then we start getting phone calls in the summer of '05. 3 phone calls to begin with, then the 4th one. They're not doing well. They're ill. They're very ill. We've talked about this a lot. We, like most people, haven't planned. We haven't really thought about this. We haven't really talked about it. Why? It's not a fun subject to talk about it. I get it. But then we're in it. And I talk about I'm special. Most people aren't going to get 4 loved ones to care for. We're on this journey. We're on this roller coaster. We had no idea how long it was going to last. And it went on for 14 years, till 2019, when the last parent passed away at 96. We're trying to raise our kids. We're trying to work. We're trying to provide quote unquote normal things for our kids in addition to school and homework, sports, because our son loved that, dance, because our daughter loved that. And as I talk about on this roller coaster, we're going in all these different directions based on the health of the parents. And I talk about we were somewhat lucky. My in-laws lived 40 miles. They were still together 40 miles in one direction. My parents, still together, lived 40 miles in another direction. They weren't across the country. They weren't many, many states away. Still difficult. Where we were living, that drive would take an hour and a half to either one of those homes. Sometimes longer, based on time, day, etc. So we're now in this new point in our life, what I call my company that I founded. And why did I start that? Because I started realizing and talking to a lot of people, most people were like us. They had never really talked about this with older loved ones. You know, I talk about that's parents, that's in-laws, that's your grandparents, and I talk about this because I've seen it, a really close uncle or a really close aunt, someone that you're going to gravitate towards to help potentially care for if something were to happen to them. So I start realizing and talking to people, they're not ready. They haven't planned. They're like us. They're like most folks. So I study as much as I can. I learn as much as I can. And I'm kind of pushed out the door. Hey, young man, go educate. And I start doing that. And I start pretty much in my own backyard. Then all of a sudden I'm going further and further. And all of a sudden I'm doing this nationally. And in all the years I've been doing it, which is 17 plus years, what I've found, I mean, these are my statistics, but what I've found is probably over 95% of people that I've either stood in front of personally, sat in front of online, really don't know anything about this subject matter. What does it mean to age, and what does it mean if someone gets ill, and what is care, and who can provide that? And one of the biggest questions, and we've talked about it a lot, what does it cost? So I started doing all that research so I could provide those answers. And what I've come up with over the years, there's over 10 different ways to pay for care. But we need to let people know that. So all this education. And then, as we've talked about, this podcast about a year or so ago, okay, how do I hopefully reach even more people? Let's start this podcast. Let's bring in all the different service providers, from care to paying for care to other services, so on and so forth. Making sure people understand there are a lot of components that are needed. What are components? Resources. When mom, dad, etc. gets ill. I mean, and the journey for mom or dad, it normally is similar for most people. It's going to start, something happens, they fall, they get ill, they're off to the doctor, they're off to the hospital, maybe they're rushed to the hospital per an ambulance. There may be treatment, there may be surgery, they're in the hospital for a certain period of time. If it is a broken hip, or maybe they've had a stroke, and they need time to learn how to move from a wheelchair to a walker with a broken hip, or try to recover and get therapy for the stroke, they're probably off to skilled nursing. Again, nursing homes don't exist. They're called skilled nursing. How long are they there? Probably a few weeks or longer. But what I've noticed, and this included my family, there still isn't a plan at that point. Everyone takes a breath. Okay, they moved from the hospital. They got through surgery. They're now in skilled nursing. They're doing okay, and there are people there taking care of them, and we can relax. Well, at some point they're going to wind up being discharged from skilled nursing. Now what? And they need care. That broken hip, it may take a few months before someone 80 plus gets somewhat back to where they were before they broke the hip. Who's going to take care of them? Well, the conversation is always, we bring someone in. They start looking into that. And they find out it's expensive. Or are they going to move them? Well, mom doesn't want to move. You know, she's adamant. She wants to die with her boots on at home. I get it. So are the adult children? So mom or dad lives, pick a city anywhere in the United States. The kids live anywhere in the United States. They probably moved away from mom or dad. They may live out of the country. And is one or more of them going to give up their husband, their wife, their partner, their kids, their job, and move back in with mom or dad? It does happen, but it's really hard. You're in your 40s, you're in your 50s, maybe you're in your 60s, you're the adult child. And now you're going to totally change your life and move back in with mom and dad. So for all these years, I've been saying there needs to be something even bigger. There needs to be this bigger conversation, this national conversation about the complexities of aging and care. And what does all this mean? I assimilate this to what most of us have seen over the last 25 or 30 years as far as smoking. Public service announcements on TV about smoking, including seeing a woman smoke through her tracheotomy. Look, I'm not telling you whether to smoke or not, but these public service announcements are out there to say, hey, is this the best idea? What Peter Ross, the co-founder and CEO of Senior Helpers, and myself are putting together is this national conversation. We want to assimilate to what's been done with smoking. We need everybody in this country thinking and talking. We're aging, folks. We got well more than 100 million people that are 35 and old. Why do I pick 35? Why do I pick on them? Because if their parents are about 30 years older, where are they? 65, maybe 70. You got to start talking. You got to start understanding. Okay, if something does happen to mom or dad, where do they want to live? And if they need care, who's going to provide the care? And how are they going to pay for it? Are you going to have to chip in, the 35-year-old, the 40-year-old, the 45-year-old? In a lot of cases, yes. But then down the line, it's you guys. Yeah, that may be 30 years from now, but if it's so expensive now, what's it going to cost then? We got to figure all this out. We got to talk about all of this. So what we're hoping with this national conversation, we're going to help people understand this issue. We're going to help people understand, again, that 4-letter word, plan, that you really need to start making a plan. I joke about this. People, based on where they are in the country, they'll put together a huge plan for their vacation to Hawaii or the Bahamas, the beaches, the car they're going to rent, the convertible, etc. But I've stood in front of thousands, and they look at me with a blank stare. They won't talk about this. Guys, we got to talk about this. We have to understand what it means. We have to understand that we have to plan. We have to understand what that means. How do we plan? Who's involved in those conversations? Beginning with a family conversation. Who's involved with that from the family if there's 3, 4, 5, 6 kids or more? Then, okay, now people are starting to get it. Where are the resources? We gotta show them and connect them to all the resources. That's a lot. There's a lot of resources out there. The problem is, and I've been talking about this for years, put a vision in your head, a hill off in the distance, and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 silos, like grain silos. That's the way the senior care industry is currently set up. Each component, each resource is a single silo. No. We have to have one big, huge tent with all the resources within that tent, communicating to each other, understanding that if you need this for mom, you probably need this other resource as well, or multiple resources. So we have to make sure that the senior care industry really understands everything that individual or family is going to need. Making sure that there's someone, a family or individual, can talk to. This is the situation we're in with my mom or my dad or my father-in-law. What do we need? We didn't know. We were brand new in this 15, 16, 17 years ago. And most people are. They need guidance. What's coming? What do we have to have? And once we get through this point in our elder loved one's life, what are we going to need next? From the beginning through the end. And we've talked about that. And yeah, I mean, at some point we all pass, and what's out there from a funeral perspective, and what's out there even before that from palliative care and from hospice, and understanding all that, and understanding how that's paid for and where Medicare can help you or pay for all of it. That's what we're trying to do. Understand the issue. Learn to plan. Understand how you plan. Talk to someone when needed to help you understand what you need. To be a guiding hand, someone to hold your hand through this process with mom, dad, etc. Finding and connecting with all the resources. This can't be complicated. It is. We have to make it simpler. We have to have neighbors talking, and you're at the fence, you're talking about whatever with your neighbor. Yeah, this isn't a fun subject, but this subject has to come up as well. You're aware your neighbor has parents in a different state that they go to visit, and they're late 70s, 80s, and maybe they've already had conversations with you that they're starting to struggle. Maybe they still live in cold weather climates and they're struggling, especially in the wintertime. We got to talk. We got to have a national conversation about this issue. This started with my story for me. Over all these years, it's now grown to this national conversation. It's an understanding that what we've gone through, so many people are currently in, or they will be moving in this direction. I talk about the boomers that I'm smack in the middle of. This is really hard for me to comprehend. The oldest ones are turning 80 in 2026. That's less than 2 years from now. 80. The boomers have had a huge impact on this country. They're now the older folks, with the 35s and 40 and 45-year-old and probably 50-year-old kids that have parents in their 80s. Folks, I'm going to stop screaming, but I'm going to keep on screaming. We need this national conversation. Peter and I are putting this together. It's going to take us some time. We're going to bring some of the brightest people together around the country to assist with this. Our goal is to make sure that people, irrespective of where you live, understand this issue, understand how important planning is, how to do it, what that means, understand you'll have someone to talk to, and understand you're going to get help connecting with the resources that you need. You have a comment, you want to talk to me, you want to reach out, you're an expert in the field. The email again, eldered2023@gmail.com. Really important issue, folks. I know most of you would rather be talking about something else, but this is real. Until we talk again, have yourself an awesome day.